From the moment you enter this world, you are taught to live by laws. The laws of society, the rules of family, the codes of culture, and the invisible expectations that shape how you walk, speak, behave, and even dream. Most people grow up believing that these are the only laws that matter. Work hard, follow the rules, stay positive, and eventually life will reward you. But at some point you begin to notice something that does not make sense. You see people who work tirelessly, yet remain stuck in survival. You see others who cut corners, who bend truth, who seem careless, yet they prosper and advance with ease. You notice that positivity alone does not shield anyone from disappointment. You realize that discipline without direction can keep a person running in circles. And then you encounter the words of Owen Hermstring and his book, The Law Behind the Laws. And suddenly everything you thought you knew about how life works begins to collapse. Hermstring makes a daring claim that unsettles even the most rational thinker. The visible laws you've been trained to follow are not the ultimate forces shaping your life. They are surface structures, secondary frameworks, shadows of a deeper principle that quietly dictates who rises, who falls, who attracts, and who endlessly chases. He calls it the law behind the laws, the energetic principle that underpins every outcome and interaction. When you first hear this, your logical mind resists. Surely hard work matters, surely strategy matters, surely positivity matters, and yes, they do, but only to the degree that they align with this hidden principle. If they run counter to it, they create nothing but exhaustion. This is the shocking realization. You are not failing because you are lazy, unlucky, or unworthy. You are failing because you are obeying the wrong law. Hermstring explains that most people live their lives like actors, reciting lines in a script written by others, never realizing that the real director is not culture, family, or even chance, but the frequency you emit at every moment. And that frequency is determined not by what you say or do in public, but by the silent agreements you carry within. The universe, he insists, does not respond to the mask, but to the vibration behind it. Imagine for a moment that you are playing a board game, but no one ever told you the real rules. You've been told to collect points, to play fair, to stay patient, and to trust the process. But the truth is, the game rewards not points but energy. It does not care how much effort you spend, if the vibration behind your effort contradicts the outcome you desire. That is why two people can do the same work with the same tools in the same environment, and one flourishes while the other struggles. The hidden variable is not luck or talent, it is alignment with the law behind the laws. Hermstring shares a story of his own awakening to this realization. He recalls a period of his life when he was working harder than ever, waking at dawn, pushing through tasks, networking relentlessly, all while watching others who seemed to do less surpass him in every measure of success. The frustration reached a breaking point until he encountered a mentor who asked him a simple but piercing question. Are you aligned with what you are chasing, or are you chasing what does not belong to your alignment? That question shattered him. For the first time, he saw that he was not losing because he lacked discipline, but because he was broadcasting contradiction. His surface actions were screaming ambition, but his inner state was radiating fear, lack, and disbelief. The law behind the laws responded not to his ambition, but to his frequency. When you grasp this truth for the first time, it feels like the floor beneath you has fallen away. Every excuse dissolves. You can no longer blame society, circumstance, or even destiny. You realize you have been programmed to obey surface rules, while the deeper current that truly shapes life has been ignored, and once you see this, you cannot unsee it. Hermstring emphasizes that this is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because you realize how much of your life has been unconsciously misaligned. Liberating because you finally glimpse the possibility of radical change. The shocking realization, therefore, is not simply intellectual, it is visceral. You feel it in your body when you notice how often you perform rituals of effort without ever shifting your inner state. You recognize how many times you tried to force reality instead of aligning with it. You begin to see your failures not as random punishments, but as consistent feedback from the deeper law. Hermstring calls this the mirror effect. Life is not judging you, it is reflecting you. Every delay, every closed door, every repeated disappointment has been your frequency echoing back at you. And so, discovering that there is a law beyond the laws is like being handed a new set of eyes. Suddenly, the world around you looks different. Success stories no longer feel like mysteries or miracles. They reveal themselves as case studies in alignment. Failure no longer feels like shame. It feels like a miscalibration, a signal pointing you back to the core. The deeper you allow this realization to sink in, the more you recognize that everything you were taught about control was incomplete. The real control begins not with action, but with awareness, not with doing, but with being. Hermstring writes in The Law Behind the Laws, "The visible laws are useful servants but terrible masters. They obey the invisible principle, not the other way around. Align with the source, and all else must follow." That is the invitation and also the challenge. Because once you know this, you can no longer live the same way. The game has changed forever. You have been taught your entire life to follow the rules that are visible, measurable, and praised by society. Work hard, stay disciplined, be positive, network with the right people, and eventually things will fall into place. And yet, as Owen Hermstring reveals in The Law Behind the Laws, these surface laws often become traps rather than stepping stones. They keep you running in endless circles of effort without ever touching the deeper alignment that actually unlocks results. The paradox is that surface laws do work sometimes, but only in fragments. They give you just enough reward to keep you hooked, just enough progress to convince you that more effort will eventually lead to the breakthrough you crave. But like a maze designed to distract, these laws absorb your attention while the real principle quietly governs outcomes in the background. Consider the law of hard work, one of the most cherished beliefs in modern culture. From childhood, you are told that nothing worthwhile comes without sacrifice, that effort is the price of success. And of course, effort matters. But how many times have you poured yourself into tasks, given everything you had, and yet received almost nothing in return? Meanwhile, someone else seems to glide past you with half the effort and twice the results. Hermstring explains that the law of hard work, when disconnected from energetic alignment, becomes a trap. You end up glorifying exhaustion, measuring your worth by struggle, and mistaking activity for progress. The hidden law is not impressed by sweat. It responds only to frequency. The same goes for the law of positivity. Countless motivational teachings tell you to just stay positive, to think happy thoughts, and avoid negativity at all costs. But how often has forced positivity left you feeling more disconnected, more hollow, as if you were plastering a smile over a wound? Hermstring emphasizes that positivity without alignment is denial. It suppresses the truth rather than transforming it. The universe does not reward fake optimism. It responds to authentic resonance. A person radiating calm certainty, even while acknowledging challenges, attracts far more than someone chanting affirmations while secretly drowning in fear. Discipline is another celebrated surface law. We are told that success is built on routines, habits, and relentless consistency. But discipline without inner clarity often breeds rigidity rather than mastery. You wake up at 5 a.m. because someone said successful people do. You read a book a week because that is what achievers supposedly practice. You push your body, your mind, your time into routines that look impressive from the outside, yet deep down, you feel empty. Hermstring warns that discipline becomes a prison. When it is driven by imitation rather than intention, the invisible law responds not to how strict your habits are, but to whether your habits are aligned with your authentic self. These surface laws trap you because they appeal to the part of you that seeks certainty. They offer formulas and checklists. They make you feel that if you just do enough, follow enough, sacrifice enough, eventually the door will open. But the tragedy is that for many, the door never does. Instead, they grow older carrying the silent question, why does life never reward me in proportion to what I give? Hermstring's answer is unsettling but freeing. You have been obeying servants while ignoring the master. The surface laws are secondary. They bend to the law behind the laws. This is why two people can adopt the same system, the same strategy, even the same mindset training, and end with radically different outcomes. One thrives, the other stagnates. The difference is not in the routine, but in the resonance. The person aligned with the hidden law turns every surface practice into power. The one who is misaligned turns every practice into struggle. It is not what you do that matters most, but who you are while doing it. Hermstring describes the trap of surface laws as a treadmill that never stops moving. You sweat, you run, you burn energy, but the scenery never changes. You feel progress in the moment, but realize months later that you are still in the same place. And because you don't understand the deeper principle, you blame yourself. You think you are not disciplined enough, not positive enough, not hard-working enough. So you double down on the same treadmill that exhausted you in the first place. That is how the trap sustains itself, not by failing you completely, but by keeping you just hopeful enough to never look deeper. The danger of these traps is that they also create identity. You begin to see yourself as the hard-working one, the positive one, the disciplined one, and you cling to these identities even when they no longer serve you. You take pride in struggle because it feels noble, even if it never yields fruit. You dismiss the ease of others as luck because it threatens your belief that struggle is the only way. Hermstring challenges this conditioning directly. The law does not reward your suffering. It mirrors your state. If your state is misaligned, no amount of suffering can compensate. So why do people cling so tightly to surface laws? Because they are visible, and visibility feels safe. You can show others how hard you are working. You can post your morning routine online. You can display your productivity like badges of honor. But the invisible law cannot be displayed. It can only be lived. And that is frightening. To release the surface laws as absolutes feels like freefall, yet it is precisely in that freefall that you discover the deeper ground. Hermstring assures us that once you understand this, surface laws don't disappear. They regain their proper place. Work, positivity, discipline, they become powerful tools when fueled by alignment rather than desperation. Hard work anchored in resonance becomes effortless flow. Positivity rooted in authenticity becomes radiant magnetism. Discipline aligned with identity becomes unshakable freedom. The trap is not in the practice, it is in mistaking the practice for the principle. And so, you begin to see the world differently. You stop asking, how much effort will this require? And instead ask, does this align with who I am becoming? You stop seeking formulas and start seeking frequency. You stop measuring your worth by struggle and start measuring by resonance. That is when the surface laws stop trapping you and start serving you. This is the liberation Hermstring invites you into, to stop worshipping the shadows and to finally honor the source that casts them, to stop being trapped by the visible and to start aligning with the invisible. Because the truth is, surface laws never kept you safe, they only kept you small. There comes a point in every seeker's journey where the struggle becomes unbearable. You have worked, pushed and prayed, only to feel that reality continues to resist you. It is in this exhaustion that the possibility of something radically different emerges. Owen Hermstring calls this threshold the moment of alignment, the instant when you stop fighting with life and finally begin moving with it. Unlike the surface laws that demand endless effort and imitation, alignment is subtle, quiet, and yet explosively powerful. It is not about what you do, but about the state you hold. Most people miss this moment because they expect it to be dramatic. They imagine a sudden windfall, a miraculous sign, or some overwhelming emotional breakthrough. But Hermstring writes in The Law Behind the Laws that alignment usually reveals itself as peace. It is not the thrill of victory, but the release of resistance. It is the instant you no longer feel the need to control, because you sense that reality is already arranging itself in your favor. The paradox is that alignment often feels like less, not more. Less tension, less noise, less struggle. But hidden in that less is the opening for everything you were chasing in vain. Think of alignment as a tuning fork. When struck, it vibrates at a natural frequency, and anything in the environment that matches that frequency begins to resonate with it. Alignment works the same way. The moment you drop into your authentic frequency, life begins to mirror it with uncanny accuracy. Opportunities you once chased begin appearing without effort. People who seemed out of reach suddenly respond. Obstacles that once felt solid dissolve quietly. To the outside world, this looks like coincidence or luck. To you, it feels inevitable. Hermstring describes his own moment of alignment in a way that feels almost ordinary yet utterly transformative. After years of chasing goals with relentless discipline, he reached a breaking point and simply stopped. For the first time in his adult life, he sat in silence and asked not, What must I do? But who am I being? That single shift of attention changed everything. Within weeks, opportunities that had resisted him for years began arriving, not because he suddenly worked harder, but because his energy finally matched the outcomes he desired. He explains it like this: when your inner state and your desired reality share the same frequency, reality bends toward you like iron to a magnet. It cannot resist because it is not responding to effort, but to resonance. The moment of alignment is also terrifying because it requires surrender. Up until now, you may have believed that your control, your strategies, your constant vigilance were what kept you safe. To release that control feels like stepping into freefall. But Hermstring insists that this is the only way to access the deeper law. You must let go of the illusion that you can force reality into shape. Reality does not bend to force, it bends to frequency, and alignment is the courage to trust that your authentic state is enough. One of the most profound aspects of alignment is how natural it feels once you are in it. You wonder why you spent so long struggling, because this state feels like home. The anxiety that once haunted your decisions dissolves. The urgency that made you rush fades. You begin to sense a quiet timing, as if the universe itself is carrying you. And in that flow, life feels cooperative instead of combative. Hermstring emphasizes that this is not passivity. Alignment is not sitting back and waiting for life to happen. It is acting from a place of clarity rather than fear. It is doing less but achieving more because your actions now spring from resonance, not resistance. The outside world will notice. People may ask why you seem calmer, why you no longer react the way you used to, why things seem to come to you so easily. They may even resent it, because alignment exposes the exhaustion of those still trapped in surface laws. But those who are ready will feel inspired. Hermstring calls this the ripple effect of alignment. When one person drops into authentic frequency, others around them begin to feel the possibility of doing the same. Alignment is contagious. This moment also changes your relationship with time. Before alignment, you were always in a hurry, rushing toward outcomes that never seemed to arrive. After alignment, time feels elastic. Some things happen faster than you imagined. Others slow down in ways that feel perfect. You stop measuring progress by the clock and start sensing it by resonance. The pressure of deadlines fades, replaced by trust in divine timing. Hermstring explains, time bends to alignment because alignment exists outside of time. When you are aligned, you step into the timeless field where all possibilities already exist. Your chosen reality finds its way to you through the fastest available route. The challenge is to stay in alignment once you've tasted it. The mind will try to pull you back into control, effort, and anxiety. Old programming will whisper that peace is laziness, that trust is foolish, that you must keep striving. This is where awareness becomes crucial. The more you practice alignment, the more familiar it becomes. You begin to recognize the difference between forced energy and aligned energy. You notice when you are straining and when you are flowing. And with practice, you choose flow more often. The first time you experience the moment of alignment, it feels like a miracle. The 100th time, it feels normal. That is the true gift. You are no longer surprised by the cooperation of life. You expect it. You live in partnership with the hidden law instead of in opposition to it. And from that place, everything you desire feels not like a distant dream, but like a natural extension of who you are. Hermstring leaves us with this reminder. Alignment is not something you achieve. It is something you remember. You were born aligned. The noise of the world pulled you away. The moment you return, the universe breathes with you again. When you finally step into alignment, something unexpected happens. At first there is relief, a sense of flow, an ease you may have never known before. But soon after, there is collapse. Not collapse in the sense of your life falling apart, though at times it may look that way on the surface. The collapse Hermstring speaks of is deeper, more internal. It is the crumbling of beliefs that once gave you certainty, but also kept you trapped. Alignment acts like a light in a dark room, and once that light turns on, you cannot unknow what you see. You begin to recognize how much of your life was built on ideas that were never yours. Ideas about worth, success, love, and possibility. They begin to unravel, and while the end result is liberation, the process can feel like death. Hermstring calls this stage the undoing, and he warns that it is both essential and unavoidable. Think about the first belief most people hold: success comes only from struggle. Society repeats this mantra endlessly. Parents, teachers, bosses, and even peers reinforce it. If you want something, you must suffer for it. When alignment enters, this belief begins to collapse. You realize that many of your greatest breakthroughs came not from pushing, but from releasing. You see people achieving extraordinary things without destroying themselves in the process. At first, this offends you. You feel betrayed, as if life cheated by rewarding ease instead of sacrifice. But then you notice how much of your identity was tied to struggle. Who are you if not the one who suffers for progress? The collapse of this belief feels like losing part of yourself, yet in truth, it is the false self that dies. Another common belief that shatters is the idea that you must always be in control. Alignment reveals how often control has been a mask for fear. You orchestrated, planned, and micromanaged, not because you trusted life, but because you didn't. Hermstring writes, "Control is the prison you build when you don't trust the law. Alignment is the freedom you enter when you do." When this belief collapses, you feel disoriented. How can you live without gripping every outcome? But as you practice release, you discover something shocking. Life often organizes itself better without your interference. The collapse of control gives birth to trust, and trust births freedom. There is also the collapse of self-worth tied to achievement. For years you may have believed that you mattered only if you produced enough, earned enough, or impressed enough people. But once alignment takes hold, you begin to sense worth as something intrinsic, untied to performance. This belief dissolves slowly and painfully. You may feel naked without your achievements to prop you up, but in time, you realize how exhausting it was to constantly prove yourself. Hermstring explains, "Worth is not something to earn, but something to embody. When you embody it, reality reflects it. When you chase it, reality hides it." The collapse of old beliefs is messy. You will question yourself, doubt your path, even feel tempted to return to the safety of old patterns. Friends or family may reinforce the old beliefs, urging you to go back to what they understand. This is why Hermstring emphasizes that the collapse stage is the most fragile. It is easy to mistake it for failure when in fact it is progress. He compares it to demolishing a crumbling house before building a new one. For a time, all you see is rubble. But the rubble is evidence that the structure that imprisoned you is gone. Without collapse, there can be no creation. It is also in this stage that resistance intensifies. The mind clings to old beliefs like a drowning man clings to driftwood. These beliefs gave you identity, and without them you feel exposed. The voice in your head may scream that you are crazy for abandoning the old ways. It may insist that hard work, control, and external validation are the only paths. Hermstring suggests not fighting these voices, but observing them. He writes, "Beliefs die when you stop feeding them, starve them of your energy, and they collapse under their own weight. As these beliefs fall away, space opens within you. It is uncomfortable space at first, empty and unfamiliar, but soon new awareness begins to fill it. You notice synchronicities you never saw before. You feel impulses that guide you in fresh directions. You attract relationships that mirror your new state, instead of reinforcing the old one. And slowly you begin to realize that collapse was not destruction, but purification. You did not lose anything real. You only lost illusions. What makes this stage so difficult is that collapse rarely looks noble. To the outside world, it may look like confusion, instability, even regression. You may quit a job, end a relationship, or withdraw from routines that once defined you. People will not understand. They will say you are wasting potential, sabotaging success, or running away. But only you will know the truth. You are clearing space for a life built on resonance rather than programming. Hermstring describes it as the silence between two songs. The first song ends, and for a moment there is nothing, but without the pause, the new song could never begin. If you endure this stage with awareness, something remarkable happens. You stop clinging to beliefs as anchors and begin using them as tools. You can still work hard, but now from alignment instead of desperation. You can still plan, but now from trust instead of fear. You can still celebrate achievements, but without tying them to your worth. The collapse of old beliefs makes room for a new kind of freedom, the freedom to live without illusions. Hermstring concludes this stage with a promise: collapse is not punishment. It is proof that the deeper law has taken hold. Do not mourn what falls away, celebrate it. For every belief that dies, a truth is born, and truth will never collapse. Once the old beliefs collapse, you begin to notice something extraordinary. Life itself seems to rearrange around you. The same streets you have walked for years feel different. Conversations with friends take on a new depth. Opportunities appear that were invisible before. Nothing outside has fundamentally changed, and yet everything feels changed. This is what Owen Hermstring calls the mirror effect of reality. The hidden law does not respond to your surface actions or your intentions alone. It mirrors your state of being with perfect accuracy. And when your state shifts, the mirror reflects a new image. Most people misunderstand how life responds. They believe it reacts to effort, to struggle, or to luck. But Hermstring insists the universe is not a punisher or a rewarder. It is a mirror. A mirror does not decide whether to show you something beautiful or ugly. It simply reflects what stands before it. In the same way, your reality does not choose randomly who you will become. It reflects who you already are at the level of frequency. This is why alignment is so powerful. The moment you change your state, reality has no choice but to mirror it back. Consider how this plays out in relationships. Before alignment, you may have repeatedly attracted partners who undervalued you, friends who betrayed your trust, or colleagues who overlooked your contributions. You might have concluded that life was unfair, or that people were cruel by nature. But Hermstring explains that they were not creating your experience, they were mirroring it. If deep down you believed you were unworthy, life provided partners who treated you as unworthy. If you secretly feared betrayal, you drew in situations that fulfilled that expectation. When your inner state shifted, those same patterns dissolved. People began treating you differently, not because they had changed, but because the frequency you carried had. This mirror effect also applies to opportunities. Many believe luck separates those who succeed from those who fail. But the truth is that opportunities are everywhere, flowing through every environment. What changes is your ability to perceive and receive them. Before alignment, you might have walked past chances without noticing. You were tuned to lack, so abundance was invisible to you. After alignment, the same opportunities that were always present suddenly shine like beacons. Your awareness shifts, and what was once hidden becomes obvious. It feels like the universe is offering you new gifts, but in reality, the mirror is simply reflecting your new capacity to see. Hermstring describes the mirror as impartial. It does not favor or discriminate. This can feel uncomfortable because it means that every painful circumstance you once experienced was, in some way, reflecting your inner state. But he cautions against self-blame. A mirror is not cruel for showing dirt on your face. It is simply honest. Reality's reflections are not judgments, but feedback. They reveal what you are radiating so that you can adjust. He writes, "Do not curse the mirror for what it shows. Use it as a tool. Every reflection is a chance to refine your frequency." The most powerful part of this realization is that you stop feeling like a victim of circumstance. If reality is only a mirror, then you are never powerless. You may not control the timing of the reflection, but you always control the state that is being reflected. Suddenly, life becomes less about forcing outcomes and more about curating your inner world. You begin to see that the fastest way to change an external situation is not to attack it, but to alter the state that attracted it. But here's the paradox. Once you understand the mirror effect, you no longer obsess over outcomes. You focus instead on your state, knowing that reality will follow. This is liberating. Instead of checking constantly whether your desires have manifested, you nurture the alignment within. And soon, external confirmation arrives not as a surprise, but as a natural result. The less you chase, the more the mirror reflects abundance back to you. This stage also changes how you handle setbacks. Before, a delay or rejection might have crushed you. You would have taken it as proof that the universe was against you. But now you see it differently. A rejection is simply the mirror saying, "Not yet aligned." Instead of despair, you turn inward. What is this reflection teaching me about my frequency? What must shift within me for reality to mirror something new? This transforms failure from an enemy into a teacher. Hermstring warns, however, that the mirror is relentless. It reflects not only your conscious intentions, but also your unconscious wounds. If you carry unresolved pain, reality will echo it back until it is healed. This can feel brutal, but it is profoundly compassionate. Life is always showing you the truth of what you carry, giving you endless chances to release what no longer serves. Hermstring explains, "The mirror never lies. That is why it hurts, but it is also why it heals." Another remarkable effect is how others respond to your presence. When you are aligned, people sense it without you saying a word. They feel drawn to your calm, your clarity, your energy. Opportunities seem to chase you because humans, like all things, are responsive to frequency. This does not mean you manipulate others. It means you embody a state that naturally influences them. You become like a tuning fork, silently shifting the vibrations of everyone around you, and so, reality's mirror becomes your greatest ally. Instead of resenting it, you begin to trust it. You realize that if something unpleasant shows up, it is an invitation to refine yourself. If something beautiful appears, it is confirmation that you are aligned. Either way, the mirror is working for you, not against you. This trust makes life feel less random and more intimate. You no longer fear the future because you know it will always reflect the state you choose today. Hermstring captures this truth in one of his most powerful lines. "The universe is not testing you. It is showing you yourself. Every reflection is a message. Become the one who matches what you desire, and the mirror will have no choice but to comply." This is the moment you stop chasing reality and start conversing with it. You see every experience as dialogue, every setback as feedback, every success as resonance, and slowly you begin to realize that reality has always been your ally. It was only your misunderstanding that made it feel like an enemy. When you finally recognize that reality is a mirror, the implications are staggering. Suddenly, the excuses vanish. You cannot blame chance, circumstance, or even other people in the same way you once did. Because if life is reflecting your inner state, then you are the one shaping what appears. This is both exhilarating and terrifying. Exhilarating because it means you are no longer a victim of randomness. Terrifying because it places the weight of responsibility squarely on your shoulders. This is why Owen Hermstring dedicates an entire section of The Law Behind the Laws to what he calls the responsibility of power. It is the stage where you realize that alignment is not just about getting what you want, it is about owning the energy you put into the world. Most people long for power, but they imagine it in terms of control over others, influence over events, or mastery over material success. Hermstring redefines power as something far more subtle, yet infinitely more consequential. Power, he says, is the ability to hold a frequency so consistently that reality has no choice but to mirror it. True power is not domination, but resonance. And with that resonance comes responsibility because the universe is impartial. It will echo back whatever you radiate, whether it is love or fear, clarity or confusion, abundance or scarcity. You cannot selectively wield power without also owning its consequences. This is where many stumble. They embrace the law behind the laws with enthusiasm, using it to manifest goals and desires, but they resist acknowledging the responsibility that comes with it. They want the mirror to reflect their intentions, not their hidden fears. They want alignment to work only for their positive thoughts, not their unconscious wounds. But Hermstring is clear. The mirror never lies. If your frequency is inconsistent, reality will reflect the inconsistency. If you harbor resentment while trying to manifest love, you will attract conflict. If you chase wealth while secretly believing you are unworthy, you will attract situations that confirm the unworthiness. The responsibility of power is to become honest with yourself at the deepest level. This responsibility also means you can no longer indulge in blame. When something painful happens, the reflex may be to point outward, to the boss who mistreated you, the partner who betrayed you, the system that limited you. And yes, those experiences are real and valid, but Hermstring challenges you to look deeper. What within you aligned with this reflection? What belief, fear, or unresolved wound did reality amplify through this event? This does not mean self-blame or guilt. It means reclaiming power. If the world is only a mirror, then nothing is permanent unless you keep reflecting it. Responsibility is the recognition that you always hold the capacity to shift. There is a maturity required here. Many abandon the journey at this point because it feels too heavy. They prefer the comfort of believing life is unfair, random, or dictated by forces beyond them. That belief allows them to avoid responsibility. But once you have seen the mirror in action, you cannot return to ignorance. The deeper law demands that you own your role as co-creator. Hermstring explains, responsibility is not a burden but a crown. To wear it is to recognize your sovereignty. To deny it is to remain a child in the universe. This stage also brings ethical responsibility. Once you realize your frequency influences not only your life, but also the field around you, you must ask, what am I contributing to the collective? Every thought, every emotional state ripples outward. Your fear adds to the fear of the world. Your calm adds to its peace. Most people underestimate their influence, believing they are too small to matter. But Hermstring insists the opposite is true. Every aligned individual becomes a node of coherence that alters the whole. Your responsibility is not just personal, it is collective. The way you hold yourself reshapes the energy of every space you enter. The responsibility of power also dismantles the illusion of shortcuts. You cannot pretend to be aligned for the sake of appearances, because the mirror responds to authenticity, not performance. This means you must do the inner work, facing wounds, dismantling illusions, choosing new beliefs, not because anyone is watching, but because the frequency you radiate cannot be faked. Hermstring warns, you can deceive people, but you cannot deceive the law. The mirror will always expose your truth, and yet, with this responsibility comes liberation. Once you embrace it fully, you stop fearing life's unpredictability. You understand that nothing is truly against you. It is only reflecting you. This allows you to meet challenges with courage instead of panic. When fear arises, you don't suppress it. You integrate it. When disappointment appears, you use it as feedback. The responsibility of power transforms every experience into dialogue with the universe. Life no longer feels random, it feels intimate. This stage also marks the birth of humility. Paradoxically, the more power you embody, the less you feel the need to boast or control. You recognize that your frequency does the work silently. You don't need to convince others because your presence speaks louder than your words. Hermstring describes it beautifully. Responsibility turns power into stewardship. You no longer ask, what can I take? But, what can I hold? And what you hold becomes the reality you create. The weight of responsibility is real, but so is its beauty. To live in this way is to become sovereign, to walk through the world knowing you are both the source and the mirror of your experience. No one else carries this for you, and though that truth may feel heavy, it is also the only path to true freedom. For when you accept responsibility, you stop waiting for life to change and begin shaping it consciously. You become not just a participant in the universe, but a co-creator of it. When you begin living under the law behind the laws, one of the most profound shifts is not in what you have, but in who you are. Outcomes are exciting, wealth, love, opportunity, but they are only byproducts. The deeper transformation happens at the level of identity. Owen Hermstring insists that alignment is not about acquiring things, but about becoming someone new, or rather, remembering the self you were before programming and illusions took over. He writes, "The law does not deliver what you want, it delivers who you are willing to become." Identity is often overlooked because most people believe they are fixed. They say, "This is just who I am." But the truth is that identity is fluid, constructed out of beliefs, experiences, and choices. For most, this identity has been shaped unconsciously by family, culture, and trauma. They become the sum of what they were told and what they survived. Hermstring explains that this is why change feels so difficult. You are not simply trying to alter habits or outcomes, you are challenging the very structure of who you believe yourself to be. The transformation of identity begins the moment you align with the hidden law. Suddenly, old labels no longer fit. You realize you are not merely the hard-working one, or the unlucky one, or the one who always gets betrayed. These were roles assigned to you, roles you performed so long that they felt like truth. But alignment dismantles those stories. It introduces a new possibility. You are not defined by your past roles. You are defined by the frequency you hold now. This realization is liberating but destabilizing. Without the old labels, who are you? This stage is often marked by a sense of disorientation. Friends and family may notice you seem different. You no longer react the way you once did. Things that used to trigger you now pass like shadows. You may no longer feel compelled to defend yourself, prove yourself, or chase validation. This shift unsettles those who are still living by surface laws. They may accuse you of changing, of being distant, of abandoning the person they thought you were. And in a way, they are right. That old identity is dissolving, and with it, the version of you they were familiar with. Hermstring emphasizes that this is not about rejecting your past, but integrating it. Identity transformation is not a clean break, it is an evolution. You take the lessons of your old self, but release the limitations. You honor the struggles that shaped you, but refuse to let them define you. Slowly, a new sense of self emerges, one that is not tied to external validation, but to internal resonance. An important part of this transformation is shifting from doing to being. In the old identity, you were always proving through action. You measured yourself by achievements, by recognition, by what you could show the world. But in the new identity, you measure yourself by alignment. You focus less on what you do and more on the state from which you do it. A single aligned action carries more weight than 100 forced ones, and so you begin to live differently, not busier, but deeper. Hermstring illustrates this with the metaphor of a seed. A seed does not become a tree by working harder. It becomes a tree by aligning with its nature. Identity transformation is the same. You stop trying to build yourself according to external standards and begin to unfold naturally, according to the essence within. The more you align, the more authentic you feel, and authenticity becomes your new identity. This shift also changes how you relate to goals. Before, your goals defined you. I will be successful when I achieve this. I will be worthy when I obtain that. Now goals become expressions of identity rather than conditions for it. You no longer chase success to prove yourself. You embody success as a state, and outcomes reflect it. You no longer seek love to fill a void. You embody love, and relationships mirror it. Identity transforms goals from distant pursuits into natural extensions of who you already are. The transformation of identity is also visible in how you handle challenges. In the old self, setbacks would have triggered panic, self-doubt, or despair. In the new self, they become invitations to refine alignment. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What is this reflecting about me?" This shift in perspective is not forced. It flows naturally from the new identity. You become someone who interprets life differently and therefore lives differently. Hermstring calls this stage the birth of sovereignty. You stop being a character in someone else's story and start authoring your own. You stop wearing masks to fit into others' expectations and begin living unapologetically in your truth. This does not mean arrogance. It means authenticity. You no longer need approval to validate who you are, because your resonance is its own validation. Perhaps the most striking part of this transformation is how effortless it feels once it takes root. You are no longer trying to change yourself. You simply are different. The cravings, fears, and doubts that once dominated your choices lose their grip. You wake up and realize you do not desire the same toxic patterns. You do not chase the same hollow victories. You do not settle for the same limitations. You have become a new person, and from this new person, a new life unfolds. Hermstring summarizes it in a single line. The greatest manifestation is not what you get, but who you become. Identity is the true creation. When you transform it, everything else follows. The final stage of this journey is not about practice, not about technique, not even about constant effort. It is about embodiment. Owen Hermstring calls this living as the law. It is the point where you no longer apply principles like tools you pick up and put down. You no longer remind yourself daily to visualize, to affirm, to align. Instead, you become the embodiment of the hidden principle itself. The law is no longer something you follow, it is something you are. Most people approach the law behind the laws as though it were a method to be used for specific outcomes. They think of it as a technique for attracting money, relationships, or opportunities. And in the beginning, that is often how it works. You practice alignment in order to see if the mirror really responds. You test it with small desires, small shifts. But as you mature, the law stops being a technique and becomes your identity. You don't use it to get things. You live it because it is the truth of how reality works. And when you live it fully, the outcomes you once chased become inevitable. Hermstring explains this transition with a metaphor of water. A beginner is like someone learning to swim. They thrash, they practice, they consciously remember every movement. But once swimming becomes natural, the person no longer thinks about technique. They simply glide through the water. Living as the law is the same. You no longer think, how do I align? You are alignment. You no longer ask, when will the mirror reflect what I want? You know it must reflect who you are. Life stops being something you manage and starts being something you embody. What does this look like in daily life? It looks like peace, first and foremost. You stop oscillating between hope and despair, chasing highs and sinking into lows. Instead, there is a steady state of trust. Not blind optimism, but deep knowing. When challenges come, you do not panic because you know the reflection is temporary and malleable. When opportunities appear, you do not grab them desperately because you know they are not rare but natural. You walk through life with calm authority, as if reality is your collaborator rather than your opponent. It also looks like simplicity. You stop cluttering your life with unnecessary rituals, unnecessary striving, unnecessary noise. You know the law is not in the complexity, but in the frequency. So you refine, you simplify, you live in resonance rather than chaos. This simplicity is magnetic. Others sense it and are drawn to you, not because you are trying to impress them, but because your energy speaks louder than words. Living as the law also means releasing attachment. You no longer obsess over outcomes, because you know outcomes are guaranteed by alignment. This is not apathy, it is mastery. You still have desires, but you hold them lightly, trusting that they are already unfolding. You no longer beg reality to deliver. You declare through your state and allow the delivery to come in its timing. Paradoxically, the less attached you are, the faster and more gracefully life responds. Hermstring emphasizes that this stage brings a new kind of responsibility. When you live as the law, people notice. They sense the difference in your presence, even if they cannot name it. Some will feel inspired and want to learn from you. Others may feel threatened because your alignment exposes their misalignment. This is not your burden to carry, but it is part of the territory. Living as the law means becoming a silent teacher, not by preaching, but by embodying. By simply existing in resonance, you give others permission to remember their own. Another key feature of this stage is freedom from fear. Fear may still arise, but it no longer dictates your choices. You recognize it as energy, not truth. You see how the mirror only reflects it if you hold it, and so you release it quickly. Fear becomes a visitor, not a master. And without fear ruling your life, you live expansively. You take risks, follow impulses, create boldly, not because you are reckless, but because you trust the law to support you. At this level, success is not celebrated as extraordinary. It is expected because it is aligned. You no longer view manifestations as miracles, but as natural consequences of your frequency. This does not make them less joyful, it makes them more grounded. You appreciate them without clinging because you know they are not the source of your fulfillment. You are the source. Hermstring writes, "The final proof of mastery is not what you manifest, but how little you need to manifest in order to feel whole." Living as the law is the recognition that wholeness was never in the outcome, it was always in the alignment. And once you live from wholeness, outcomes flow endlessly, but they no longer define you. The journey from struggle to alignment, from collapse to identity transformation, leads here to embodiment. It is not about using the law to change your life. It is about becoming the law so that life cannot help but reflect your truth. When you live as the law, you realize there is no separation between you and the universe. You are not a small self begging a larger force for blessings. You are the field itself, shaping reality with every vibration. This is the state Hermstring calls sovereignty. It is not loud, not forceful, not arrogant. It is quiet, steady, unshakable. You know who you are. You know what you radiate, and you know reality cannot resist responding. That is the final freedom, not control but embodiment, and so the journey ends where it truly began, within. The law behind the laws was never outside of you. It was always the essence of who you are. The discovery was not learning something new but remembering what you had forgotten. And now, living as the law You no longer chase life. You live it, effortlessly, fully.